Part 4, Plagiarism and your PhD. I want to talk with you in this part about plagiarism culture and how we avoid it in doctoral programs. Plagiarism has never been easier to do, and it's never been easier to detect. And I'm going to talk about why this is happening and how you can avoid it. I'll also tell you the signs that I look for as an examiner when I'm worried about plagiarism in a PhD. I know this topic upsets and worries students, so let's talk about it in a way that's relaxed and contextualised, but also very practical. Most of us, when talking about digitisation, we use words like efficiency, productivity, connectivity. Great words, but what is rarely mentioned is one of the causes of this efficiency is that an array of functions in our daily lives are now automated and displaced from our patterns of conscious decision-making. So in the old days, we would read a book and take analogue notes with a pen and a notebook. And this was careful, it was considered, but it was also slow. Now we read on a computer and take notes on our computer, and through cutting and pasting, there's all this movement between ideas, and it's quick. And it's easy, but it's sometimes sloppy. We think we're saving time, but we're actually cutting corners, and that has some consequences. When I enrolled at the University of Western Australia in Perth for my first degree, there was no mention of plagiarism. None. But compare this situation to our present. I run inductions for new students. I've done so since 1997. And each year, plagiarism has crept further and further up the agenda of these inductions. So Turnitin, Authenticate, text matching software, it manages plagiarism. It catches plagiarism. It censors the cheaters. But are we missing something in this story? Indeed, are we missing the actual story? And that's why I stressed in our last part that we need to talk about Turnitin as a diagnostic, because it helps us see and develop information literacy. There is, of course, a bigger question, a meta question. Why, in the last 25 years, has plagiarism moved from relatively invisible to pretty well the key scholarly crime in our universities? And I argue that plagiarism is a proxy. It's a strategy to blame the victim rather than consider what has actually happened to higher education in the last 25 years. We are now living with and living through the consequences of quick and cheap fixes for teaching and learning for 2 decades. How does this impact on all of you? Well, for me, there are 5 issues, challenges and shortcuts for you to think about. The key variable for you to consider is speed. Most acts of plagiarism are not intentional. They emerge from taking shortcuts. They emerge from letting the technology determine your behaviour rather than information literacy determining your behaviour. So let's just talk about 5 issues that you can make a decision to manage today, and they will have a huge impact on your doctoral examination. The first is cutting and pasting. So note-taking is a specialist skill. Too often, digitisation enables us to take shortcuts via cutting and pasting. The problem is that cutting and pasting the words of others into your thesis means that when you're tired, which of course for a doctoral student is most of the time, it means that you can lose track of what are your words here. What is the quotation? So the shortcut, the cut and paste, can create sloppiness and can create trouble. So be aware of it. And that's why I always recommend taking notes on a different platform from the one you're reading on. So paper to computer, iPad to computer. Create space for thought, and that will slow down your reading, your interpretation and your note-taking. 2, watch your brackets. Harvard referencing poses particular challenges. It encourages paraphrasing, and it means that the line between paraphrasing and independent interpretation is unclear. As an examiner, I'm on plagiarism alert during a PhD when I see one thing, and I see it quite often, can I say. I see a paragraph of writing from a student with a Harvard bracketed reference at the end. So there are 10 sentences and then bracket, Brabazon 2023, end of bracket. Now I see that and I immediately start doing a plagiarism check. The student has not specified what is cited from the scholar's work, what is the PhD student's interpretation of the featured scholar, what is the original interpretation from the student, arching beyond the researcher. So be clear in your note-taking and your writing. Specify what is the paraphrase, put your bracketed reference there, put your footnote there, and then move to your interpretation. Never position a bracketed reference at the end of a paragraph. 3. Managing feedback, editing and drafting. It is important that you write and draft on both paper and screens. We see and find different errors through distinct drafting processes, so use both screens and paper and keep yourself fresh. Continue to defamiliarise your relationship with your own writing. And when you do that, you pick up new errors and improve your arguments. Reading on paper takes longer. It's more thorough than reading on a screen. At its most basic, a screen is a different shape to a piece of A4 paper. So what happens is, if examiners particularly are reading on paper, they're able to evaluate paragraph construction and the development of ideas in a much more fluid fashion. A4 is bigger than a screen. You can monitor the flow of ideas. Also recognise what screens do to your reading and your note-taking. So, for example, through a series of JISC studies, they demonstrated that the screen encourages superficial reading, with eyes rolling around a text rather than reading it deeply. So superficiality is the enemy of PhD research. 4. Orientations and inductions matter. It is very important at the start of a doctorate that a clear diagnostic is done, and it's never too late to do that diagnostic. You and your supervisors must be honest and compassionate when you understand the skills that you hold, but also you understand the skills that you will require. And look, this might be software expertise in EndNote. Therefore, activate the expertise of librarians in the library. It might be writing skills. Okay, we'll join our weekly writing club. It's called Write Club. Join it. Referencing skills. There are great sessions available in our libraries to teach you referencing. Understand the difference between methods and theories. Go to as many sessions and seminars as possible in your faculties, in your research centres. Only when we know what we don't know can we fix it. So right now, list down the skills that you are comfortable that you hold. But also be aware of the skills that you would like to, and perhaps you need to, develop. And yes, 5. Here we go. Keep the level of reading high. There has never been a time when there's more low-quality material available online. The problem is that low-quality source material rarely creates high-quality scholarship. When I examine theses these days, I see too many low-quality references, textbooks, blogs, non-refereed material. Now, I am not saying don't use this material. You should use this material, but you must create a balance. Remember that you need to use high-quality material to create a quality doctorate. You need to read material that will stretch you, read material that you find difficult. It's very easy to read blogs and textbooks. They're easy to read, but they are not the foundation for a PhD. PhDs are meant to be tough, and that is why the PhD is still an elite qualification. Therefore, make sure that you read the best, the most advanced, and the most verified scholarship, and write it with clarity, precision, and yes, care.